Hey guys, this is Joe East here. Today we're going to be talking about the BITE model of mind control. So if you guys have ever run into someone who was in a religious cult or a political cult or an extremely abusive situation where they were manipulated and controlled emotionally and psychological, etc., this model probably would fit them. In fact, almost all cults and mind control groups use this model in some detail. Maybe not all the elements, but definitely all the categories within the BITE model. So that's the introduction. So this is taken as a system. So the individual things we're going to be talking about here might not be bad if they're part of a proper religious or therapeutic practice. For example, prayer, chanting, hypnosis, and confession. That's standard religious and/or therapeutic practices. Taking in a proper system. But some of these things we're going to be talking about are obviously evil for perhaps financial exploitation, manipulation, and dependence, etc. The capturing people and violating their free will, basically, is kind of the way I think of abuse and manipulation that is illegitimate. Someone violating someone else's free will, and they're not, involved in criminal activity or something like that, where free will would be violated, say a prison or something. I put someone in prison for a crime, but other than that, violation of free will, I kind of consider that to be a good way to think of what is abusive, manipulative, and evil, as far as whether or not this stuff is acceptable or not. All right, so the four categories that destructive cults have, or mind control cults have, is behavior control, is the B. The I stands for information control. The T stands for thought control. And the E stands for emotional control. Now this is based on a lot of research done by a major writer on cults and mind control. His name is Steve Hassan. If you're into this sort of subject, I would recommend you get his books called Cult Mind Control and Releasing the Bonds. Very good books that he has written that contributed a lot to this area of study. It's not had much literature. Perhaps before about 15 years ago, the literature was scarce. Now it's getting pretty good, thanks to his efforts, Steve Hassan. So check him out. Check out his website. So behavior control. Let's cover some of the behavior controls you might see in cults or manipulative, abusive situations. So they can dictate how, where, and with whom the member lives and associates or isolates themselves from. So you're going to see some of these cults say, oh, well, you can't hang around with those people anymore. Your old friends, you got to get rid of them. For no good reason, right? Sometimes their friends might be good folks, and they say, well, you got to get rid of them, okay? When and how and with whom the member has sexual relations. So you're going to see a lot of barriers to, say, the youth organizations dating outside of the cult. In fact, it's probably going to be very much forbidden to date outside the cult. Control types of clothing and hairstyles. So you might see very strange prohibitions or very strange requirements on dress and hairstyles. For example, the cult I was associated with, there was some strange rule at one cult where your sleeve to your shirt had to always be below the elbow, always. And this was not like a suggestion, it was a requirement. And you get into very strange, weird, bizarre cases like that just doesn't make any sense to a normal person. Regulate diet, food, drink, hunger, and or fasting. So you're going to see these, this is not typical religious traditional practice like Lent or something. This right here is where you're going to see some mind manipulative guy come into the church saying, hey, I think we all need to go on a fast, and stop eating this or that to get closer to the Lord. Now, and you're going to impose that upon the crowd and those who don't comply are to be, pushed aside or shunned. Manipulation and deprivation of sleep. You're going to see many of these, specifically the religious cults, you're going to see the church services go on very long, say in the evening service. And sometimes past 10 o'clock where, you got people who have to go to work the next day, working class folks, middle class folks, kids have to go to school, etc. And if you don't stay until the so-called service is complete, well, you're going to be looked down upon and shunned and perhaps questioned if you don't stay the whole time until the service is done, even though it might run into late hours of the night. So you're going to see manipulation and deprivation of sleep. Financial exploitation, manipulation, and dependence. So most of us support our organizations we're part of, the churches. We might give very good offerings and tithes, etc. But some of these places, the financial manipulation goes into a very dark territory where they might say, you must give 10% to the pastor, and if you don't, you'll be in rebellion against God, and you're violating God's law, and therefore you're going to burn in hell. So you see that they go straight to the darkness, not like, hey man, we see you going through a bad period, no trouble. It's not like that. It's like you're evil if you don't pay 10% tithe to the pastor. Or you'll see that sort of language, sort of black and white, extremist sort of thinking, and they go very dark fast. Instead of, please help us, we're running out of money. That's one way. And then the other way is, you must, because, God said so, or, the devil's going to get you. Restriction of leisure, entertainment, and vacation time. So you're going to see a lot of these cults restrict sports activities from the members. And again, that's another way of behavior control, because, you're a human being. You got to be involved in this athletic activities or your muscles will atrophy. So it's unhealthy not to be involved in sports, right? So these people are going to manipulate you into not participating in sports sometimes. You'll see that often in some of these manipulative organizations. Major time spent with group indoctrination, rituals, and or self-indoctrinating, etc. So you're going to see, most healthy churches might have one service a week, an hour maybe. You go out there, you go through the liturgy, and you're done. Maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours max, maybe for the Orthodox Christians. But some of these, the manipulative organizations, you're going to see several church services throughout the week. And they're basically, it's a test of commitment where you go to every service. They said you should be here every time the doors are open, if you're a good Christian or if you're a true believer or whatever. Otherwise, you're going to be in danger of hellfire. So you see like 4 services a week. You're going to see Sunday morning, Sunday night, Tuesday Bible study, and then you'll see another youth service sometime. So, like 4 times a week. Normal successful people, that's not going to happen, right? You can't spend all this time. Unless you're a member of staff, right? Your church staff, you might be a musician, board member or something like that. That's okay. That's part of your profession. But if you're not part of staff or that, participating in the official functions of getting things done, going to church 4 times a week, that's manipulative. That's quite insulting. Permission required for major decisions. Say, I need to take a job somewhere. I need to move to a new city to take a new job. Well, you better ask the pastor and make sure he gets permission. You're going to see stuff like that. Thoughts, feelings, activities reported to superiors. So if you express, say, an opinion that might go against either an opinion of the so-called pastor or the church doctrine, you might be reported or might be intimidated for that particular reason. For example, somebody might pull you aside, hey, when people know what you really believe, that might be a problem. Some sort of intimidation tactics like that. You'll see that. I've seen it plenty. You'll impose strict, rigid rules and regulations. Again, the normal outside people, like, well, what are you doing? Why did they put that rule and regulation there? Well, the rules and regulations are not because mainly they think you really will burn in hell, but it's a conformance test. Most of this stuff you'll see. Instill dependency and obedience. You're going to see a lot of stuff about obeying a superior or obeying a pastor or obeying sometimes you might see the term man of God. You see a lot of that. Let's move on to the next category of information control. So deception, deliberately withholding information. Okay, so in their recruitment efforts, these cults, they'll approach people and they'll withhold information. They won't tell the potential recruit, hey, you got to conform to this list of 100 things you got to do before you even accept it as a member. No, they won't tell you that. They'll love bomb you and psychologically get you to like them, or they may even make you date some of their girls, or get some of their girls to date the guys. I've seen that happen before. Very manipulative. And before the potential recruit is told about the rules and what they're going to have to change their lives and get rid of their friends and stuff. So you'll see deception. Distortion of information to make it more acceptable. Oh, it's not that bad. You have to, have this particular hairstyle or clothing requirement. Oh, it's not that bad. Minimize or discourage access to non-cult sources of information, including internet, TV, radio, books, articles, newspapers, magazines, and other media, critical information, or former members, or keep members so busy they don't have time to think or investigate. Remember going to church 4 times a week, spending all that time, they're so busy they don't have time to think. Former members in some of the manipulative religious culture, you're going to see a term called backsliders, and that's like the most evil person possible, someone who's been a part of the cult and then left, and now they're shunned and they're just like, they don't matter, their opinions don't matter, just as if they never existed. They're backsliders, the evil people. You'll see that. So internet, TV, radios, books, some of the crazier cults are going to restrict and actually require you to not have televisions, radios, internet in your house. The craziest form of information control. They're trying to control your information, that way you can't access another type of information to critically think about your own situation. Therefore you stay in the cult. It's a way to bind your brain. Allow only leadership to decide who needs to know what and when. There's a lot of information hiding in secrets. This is insane. It's not like normal, places where, people want to be private. No, these are crazy secrets. Encourage spying on other members. Like I said before in a previous, you might have people say, you might say something that's slightly off from the official narrative or the official rules and doctrines, even slightly off, they'll report you. You'll see stuff like that. Impose a buddy system to monitor and control the members, so maybe new members will be assigned someone to watch out to see how committed they are. Report deviant thoughts, feelings, and actions to leadership. See, that this stuff is weird to normal people. It's kind of dark, but we got to watch out for the wolves, right? Ensure that individual behavior is monitored by the group. Okay, a lot of this monitoring happens by going to church 4 times a week and then have a bunch of activities, and then restriction from outside sports where the only thing you're doing is within the cult, and therefore they can monitor you easy like that. A big use of cult-generated information and propaganda. So a lot of these cults are going to have their own, say, newsletters, magazines, journals, audio tapes, videotapes, YouTube movies, and other media. I remember in the days there was just tons of preaching tapes in some of the organizations I knew about, and it was crazy where there was this big ministry of the tape ministry, and you're basically listening to these tapes over and over again, and it's just reinforcing in your brain. Another way of information control, right? Keeping you in that little bubble of information. Unethical use of confession. A lot of this, strangely enough, revolves around like sexual deviations and stuff like that, according to either standard Christianity or cultural norms. You're going to see people sometimes forced to publicly confess what they did wrong in front of the whole congregation sometimes, which is extremely evil. That's just plain evil. And information about sins used to disrupt and dissolve identity boundaries. So they're trying to break your boundaries here, your privacy and your boundaries. Withholding forgiveness or absolution. So they're always going to probably hold this over your head. So this public confession and humiliation is another way to put the thumb of the so-called leadership on top of you and control you. Thought control, the next category, thought control. Require members to internalize the group's doctrine as truth. So you're going to have to make sure you understand what they consider truth, doctrine, or whatever. Adopting the group's map of reality. It's a bizarre reality, but you have to adopt the group's reality, and there's indoctrination. Black and white thinking. There's us versus them. Good and evil there's no gray. Us being human, there's a lot of gray between good and evil, right? These guys, they're going to tend to black and white, good and evil, and the evil is obviously going to be the non-cult approved stuff, or the non-cult approved people, sources, or whatever, or actions that the so-called leadership perhaps is in disagreement with. So good and evil becomes basically, are you in or out the cult, or supporting the cult or not supporting it. Use of loaded language and cliches which constrict knowledge, stop critical thoughts, reduce complexities, platitudes, buzzwords. So they're going to teach you a list of language to use, and like I said, former members who left and now they're shunned. They're going to use the code word backsliders in some of the more crazy cults I've known of. Encouraging only good and proper thoughts. Hypnotic techniques used to alter mental states and undermine critical thinking. So you're going to see a lot of these people, they sing a lot, they hum a lot, even when it's quite inappropriate. I've seen some cult members sit in my house or going out to eat, and they just start humming. And basically what that is, they've noticed something that goes against their belief system, and they immediately start humming to block it out. So the humming shifts their consciousness back to their cult doctrines. You see that a lot. Teaching thought-stopping techniques which shut down reality. Testing by stopping negative thoughts, allowing only positive thoughts, according to the doctrine. So you're going to see the use of normal techniques as a method of thought stopping. So when you see these guys doing chanting, praying, meditating, speaking in tongues, or singing and humming, a lot of this is not necessarily what normal religious groups use this for. This is used to stop thoughts, thought stopping, to reorient the mind to the cult doctrine, to block out external. It's like a trigger, boom, to redirect your brain. Rejection of rational analysis, critical thinking, constructive criticism. So let's think through this and use rational analysis and make sure we're doing the right thing. That's going to like, oh, you're thinking too much, thinking too logically. You got to think in terms of what the authorities think, right? Forbid critical questions about the leader, doctrine, or policy. So you're never going to see allowed critical questions about the leader, doctrine, or policies. Never. You can't in a cult, because a cult can't survive without that level of control over the members' minds. It just can't happen. Labeling alternative belief systems as illegitimate, evil, or not even useful. Again, I mentioned this before, so you'll see alternative belief systems as evil. Again, you see the information control come in to the thought control, so that's kind of a combo of information and thought control. Emotional control. Manipulate and narrow the range of feelings, and some emotions or needs are deemed as evil, wrong, or selfish. Normal human emotions that everybody feels. And some of this is called evil. They make it so dramatic whenever they say evil, that where you're triggered whenever you feel a normal human emotion that they disapprove of being even legitimate. You'll have this guilt sort of trigger into your body system, and eventually it takes over your whole mind, and you just become a cult member. Make the person feel that problems are always their fault and never the leaders or the group's fault. If there's a big issue going on, it's never the members, it's never the church's fault or the cult's fault or the leader's fault. It's always the fault of the person having the problem. It's never the fault of anybody that runs the organization. It's either the external, so-called, sometimes you might say the worldly people, or the members just not living up to standards or something like that. You'll see that a lot. Promote feelings of guilt or unworthiness, such as you're not living up to your potential, your family's deficient, your past is suspect. Oh my God, your past is suspect. Remember, they don't believe completely in the idea of forgiveness and absolution like most normal religious organizations do. They'll bring up your past a lot, even when it's not right to do in some cases. Your affiliations are unwise. Oh, you're hanging out with the wrong people. Oh, I'm hanging out with a good Baptist guy. Well, you can't do that. Why? Well, the Baptist guy don't believe like you believe. See that? So watch out for that. Your thoughts, feelings, actions are irrelevant or selfish. You're going to see a lot of repression of normal emotions. So you get stressed out, you're going to like, oh, that's irrelevant. You just need to carry on. And again, this is a religious organization perhaps, and religion is like supposed to deal with the emotions of love and charity and how to keep your soul straight, right? Keep your soul clean. But your thoughts, feelings, and actions are sometimes irrelevant or selfish. All right, so there's going to be a lot of repression of say, guilt, a lot of repression of anxiety, a lot of repression of sometimes mental illnesses. So there's going to be a lot of repression, and that's going to just cause a lot of trouble in the person's health, psychological well-being, psychological health. Their social circle is going to be completely screwed up because you can't have legitimate friendships outside the cults, or therefore you're stuck with only the people in there. And these cults are usually pretty small. I mean, some of them are big, but usually pretty small. Instill fear, such as fear of thinking independently, the outside world, enemies, losing one's salvation. Oh my God. You wore a shirt a little bit above the elbow, you're in danger of hellfire, going straight to the darkness. You see, there's no light here in these organizations. That's what you're going to see on a spiritual level. If you're a spiritual kind of person, you're not going to see much light in these organizations. The light you might see, which is a fake light, is pumping up emotions a little bit to kind of pump up the endorphins, but not true spiritual light. The water that flows, the spiritual living water. You're going to see just a lot of darkness in these cult organizations. So that's one trigger you can watch out for. If you're not familiar with these types of organizations and you want to okay, let me spiritually feel out what the heck's going on here. So kind of think of that light, and you'll feel a light in the darkness sort of thing going on here. Fear of leaving or being shunned by the group. So you leave the group, you're a backslider and you're going to hell, and you can never come back to God until you come back to this cult. Okay. Extreme emotions and highs, love bombing, praise one moment, declaring you're horrible, center to the next. So they take emotions and kind of use them to manipulate you and keep you a little bit off balance and off guard. Irrational fears about leaving the group or questioning the leader's authority. So you question the leader, you question the pastor, you question the man of God, you question whoever the cult leader is. Well, then there's going to be terrible consequences. You're going to go to hell, you're going to get demon possession, you're going to get 7 more demons come into you if you question the man of God or leave or whatever. You see what I'm saying? I'm building up a little emotion here to kind of show you what they're doing. And some of you who are watching this, you might be feeling that emotion if you're a member of a cult. Incurable diseases, you're going to get cancer, you're going to get this or that, God's going to curse you, God's going to flip your car and kill you, or God's going to flip your car and make you a quadriplegic to make you come back to God. You'll hear this extremely evil, dark stories just like this in cults, and I have heard all these things. Suicide, insanity, you're going to go crazy. Shunning of those who leave, again I mentioned backsliders. Fear of being rejected by friends, peers, and family. So these cults build like a family around you, and so the fear is, oh, if I leave the cult, nobody on the outside is going to accept me because I've been a weirdo, so I'm going to be alone, because if I leave the cult family is going to just reject me. So the fear is, and it actually is real, you leave the cult, outsiders can't accept you easily because you're kind of weird. You need a lot of help, psychological help from psychological damage, and the cult leaders are not going to be family anymore because they're forced to reject you. Backsliders are evil. There's never a legitimate reason to leave. Now, those of you who are in healthy organizations, this is going to sound weird, but there's never a legitimate reason to leave a cult once you're inside. Those who leave are weak, undisciplined, unspiritual, worldly, brainwashed, seduced by money, sex, and rock and roll. They'll make up anything. They'll make stuff up to justify shunning and abuse of former members. So we're coming to the end of this somewhat dark lecture here, but I think we need to know what the bad guys are up to. Some of us like me who have good experience with the bad guys can, kind of show you guys what's out there as we try to make the world a better place. So again, the BITE model, B-I-T-E, behavior controls for B, I is for information control, T is for thought control, and E is for emotional control. And all of this is taken mainly from Steve Hassan, a cult recovery expert, and his 2 books, Cult Mind Control and Releasing the Bonds. So let's give good credit to Steve Hassan. Hand clap to this guy. He's done a lot of good work. So again, this is Joe East. If you guys have any questions you want to talk to me privately, I will keep your secrets if you need to talk privately about some of these very, very gut-wrenching issues if you need help. So contact me either by email, private message, whatever, and we'll try to help you guys out. Again, Go out there, take care of yourselves. Wish you the best. Goodbye.